Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Come in, come in. Today we have a hot topic. We got some stuff we should put out there. We're ready. From chains to change. Here I have Bruce Reilly with me. We need to get into it. We're going to talk about the amendments. Amendment 3 that's on the ballot. And Bruce, before we get into the amendments, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? I'm Bruce Reilly. Usually I am in that seat, and Nziki's more in this seat, but we're going to flip it today because we're going to get into some legal things about this constitutional amendments that are coming up, and I wanted to share some of my learning on the subject matter. And Nziki is really good at trying to pick my brain and figure out what's up. But here on Chains of Change, we don't want to let anything go by that you're not aware of. And we want to get all this information out. So please share this with the next person.
Yes. So I like to just get directly to it. I don't want to beat around the bush. Mm-hmm. I would like for you to share with us what you know about Amendment 3 and how did we get here?
Yeah. Wow. First I'll just say that for people, there are 4 amendments on the ballot. You're going to hear a lot about Amendment 3, which is about, kids getting put into the adult criminal system. Amendment 1 is about specialty courts, and we'll get into that. Amendment 2 is about taxation. We'll get into that a little bit. And Amendment 4 is about filling vacant judgeships, and we can talk about that some too. But, to what Nziki's is asking about, Amendment 3, they're really trying to lock up these kids and lock them up for a long time. And we've seen this, the pushback of when we and a lot of great activists and people who have been in the juvenile system, talking about how kids' minds are not fully developed until they're 25 legally,
right.
Or scientifically, I should say. And, this is an argument that the U.S. Supreme Court has come to understand about childhood development, what every parent knows, as as a grandparent knows.
Yes.
And so, we've developed this youth system where there's a sense of we need to bring that understanding to how we hold our kids accountable. Right. And then as we know, kids do everything from killing somebody to stealing a candy bar. Right. And as adults do maybe everything from killing somebody to stealing a candy bar. But we should be looking at them through a different lens.
Right.
But Louisiana, for the longest time, 17-year-olds who weren't old enough to do anything but go to prison legally, couldn't vote, couldn't sign a contract, but you can sign a contract if you plead guilty.
Yeah.
And so then we pushed back and got 17-year-olds to be adults, and it was a slow roll in, right? So it gave them time to prepare the system.
Right.
There's going to be more 17-year-olds taking them out of the adult system, putting them in the youth system. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there'll be more 17-year-olds in the juvenile system if you're going to do that, right? And that's actually about a quarter of the kids that get in trouble are 17. So you're going to increase the juvenile system by 25%. Courts, judges, prosecutors, defense counsel, jails, everything is going to have to go up by about 25%. They didn't do any of that. And so then a couple years ago when it switched over and then the 17-year-olds were in the juvenile system, all of a sudden all you heard was juvenile crime is off the chain, all this stuff's going on. And they were just making stuff up.
They had to.
Because it was just you took the 17-year-olds from the adult system and put them in the juvenile system.
Right.
It wasn't like anyone was more criminal. You just had it was apples to oranges at that point. And so then all of a sudden you just start hearing about this we got to treat these kids harshly.
Got to get them.
We got to get them off the street. We got to build more juvenile prisons. We got to do all this stuff. And we got to get these 17-year-olds back to being in the adult system.
Right.
So they did that. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, they started building and planning to build even more juvenile prisons. So they put them there long enough to expand the system.
Right.
And burst it. And then build more. And then they take them out again. And so this is part of a bigger effort.
It's a plan.
Yeah. And so they want more of these kids locked up. And the biggest thing to give people a sense of exactly what this constitutional amendment will do is right now, there's certain crimes, 15 of them, that are serious, where the DA has sole power to say, I want to charge this kid as an adult, right?
Right.
Classic case would be either like a murder or a robbery. Right. And in a lot of states, that's actually a hearing. Like when you have your lawyer there and they have to like kind of say how they think that this kid is irredeemable. And then the prosecutor will say, they'll say that. And then the defense counsel will be like, no, like keep this kid in the juvenile system. He or she can kind of get themselves together,
right?
Have a decent adult life and all that. And, but here it's just the whims of the DA, who's an elected official, who, if it's in the news, we already know what they're going to do, right? And so what this amendment will do is get rid of those 15 crimes and allow the legislature to replace those 15 crimes. Now, the legislature's already tipped their hand. They've already shown us what they want to do. There was a bill last year by Representative Debbie Villio from Kenner, and her bill was that all kids charged with a crime of violence under our revised statute 14.2b, there's 60 crimes in there, including attempted crimes of violence. Those would all become the new list.
Right.
And we can imagine how they're going to come back with that. They're going to talk about juvenile violent crime. But as we know, the crimes of violence, there need not even be any actual violence, right? For like distribution of fentanyl, making a drug deal is a crime of violence. Even if you hugged and, laughed about it or something, there's no violence there. But and that has a 25-year mandatory minimum. Now, the key to keep in mind is kids are already being held accountable in the juvenile system, right?
Oh, yeah, it's torture in there.
It's a real gladiator school, too.
Right.
Ain't nothing fun there, right?
No, I know some juveniles in that system. That's nothing fun. I hear the stories.
And half the reason they're escaping, when you hear about that, is it's so brutal in there. They're just trying to get safe.
Yeah.
But so instead of being held, if you're 14, 15, 16 years old, instead of being held till you're 21, which when you're that age, that's like half your life or more, in the sense of what you think of as your life. Now they can be held till they're 31, 41, 51, 61. And so you can do something at 14 and, and could be aggravated attempted burglary. You had tools in your pocket. You didn't even get a chance to break in anything yet. Maybe you weren't even going to. But either way,
thought.
Yeah. You're going to get, say 15 years instead of 5.
Right.
And now there's no parole. There's no good time. Right? And that'll keep the prison beds occupied. Yeah. And as we know in Louisiana, it's not just about prison beds, it's about jail beds run by the sheriffs. Right. Over half of our people being held in prison time are doing time in local jails. Because we've got a gulag system, about 100 different places they can lock somebody up. Basically, every sheriff has their own jail, and then the state pays them a rate to hold them. And with that money, you can keep your locals employed, right? The contractor who's like selling food, who's providing the clothing, who's making money off the commissary, the phones, they're making more money because you got more customers, right? And so it ends up becoming this economic generator,
right?
Especially in these small towns where that maybe is one of the biggest employers.
So you're saying everybody makes money off our incarcerated folks.
And then the reality is we're paying for it too, because it's coming right out of our tax dollars, and everything in the budget last year got cut except for jails and prisons. Yeah. Right? It's the one thing that will be expanded under, no matter what. And that's something that, like, we have more sense of ownership over Mrs. Benson's football team than we do over our own prisons and jails. And the reality is we don't actually own that football team. We may wear the outfit, got the fleur-de-lis, right? But we do own the jails and prisons. But they want to make it seem like the sheriff owns it or the attorney general owns it. So that is one where they're going to sell it as going after these bad kids.
Right.
Now, I guess I would ask you, you're a mom and a grandma, and how often have you had somebody in your life come around and out of nowhere be like, someone's got to help my kid?
It just happened.
A year, 5 years, 10 years before that, it would never be their kid.
Right.
Right?
Right. And when you say that, someone just came to me on yesterday and asked to get help for their kids. They was reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand that. But I guess the part that's just so hard for me to wrap my brain around is the children that not even real troublemakers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not violent kids. They could still end up in the same predicament as one that may have been in the system throughout their duration of childhood. So what do we do then?
Yeah, I think the reality is we need to first see our community the way elders should see their community.
Right. Right.
Everyone is one of your kids when you're an elder.
Yes.
You're a leader, right?
You're a leader.
And it's not an us versus them. It's not a them versus us. And if we have that sense of like, we want everyone to do well, and like literally, if your grandchild harms your other grandchild,
right,
you're going to be like, okay, we need to find a way out of this. And I want this person to be healed. I want this person also to become better. And I also want to figure out why it happened, so you try to prevent it the next time.
Right. Just getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah, I think one of the roots of our problem right now, kind of politically, is the senator who sponsored this bill initially in the State House, Senator Heather Cloud, who seems like a nice enough person. You know,
right.
Senator Royce DePlessis asked her, you know, on the record, you know, why do you think kids commit crimes? And I'm waiting for, you know, a very nuanced answer, because she's really taken a heavy interest in, you know, this issue of incarcerating kids and whatnot, and says she cares about kids, and I'm sure she does care about kids. But when asked this question, she said, we live in a fallen world. I don't know why kids do what they do. I don't know why anyone does what they do. And I just felt like, wow.
She have no clue.
We're going to base our policy, our $1 billion policy, our like family changing, future shifting policy on, I don't know, you know, and like these people are also not thinking about, well, what happens between kid A, who goes to the juvenile system,
right,
kid B, who goes to the adult system, kid C, who maybe gets like another kind of alternative. Well, if they're not really looking under the hood, they don't really seem to care. They're just like swinging, you know, the sledgehammer at everything, and just hope that it works out, I guess.
Maybe.
But they're not the ones left with the broken families.
Right.
They're not the ones who are providing the reentry program for these people when they, you know, you go in at 15, you get out at 35. Like, you've got a lot of work to do just to kind of become a regular person.
Because while you're in, what about that rehabilitation?
Yeah. And, you know, and we get lip service at the legislature about that rehabilitation, and I'm not convinced that 90% of them care one bit about the rehabilitation. And for some people, the definition of rehabilitation is the punishment is painful enough to deter future criminal conduct. So that's like saying, I'm going to beat my kid until they stop doing it.
Right.
Now, it's understandable to think that. You know, I mean, it's not coming out of left field. Like, people, they beat their wives, so they like do what they tell them to. They beat their kids till they do what they tell them to. And, you know, and arguably, I mean, people have been beating their kids for centuries. And I'm not sitting here telling you what works or doesn't work, but I know this much, like one beating or one like point in time punishment is one type of punishment.
Right.
But like a long, extended, decades-long beating really can change your circuitry. You know, it can really change your outlook on life. Could change your ability to adapt to new situations when you get out.
Right.
Because you've been dealing with this sort of like, you know, institutionalization and whatnot. So a lot of times people who who seem to comply in prisons, they don't actually do as well out here.
No.
Because you got to have a sense of like pushing through out here.
Mm-hmm.
When you get 35 different, you can't work here. You got to go for number 36. You know, it's tough out here for people. And if these kids are going to have a criminal record on their resume, and they're not going to have work experience or education.
So let me just go here.
Mm-hmm.
So that means when they get out, right? They go into this world. They got to figure it out. Why should we care about that? Like once they out?
That's a great question. Now, a lot of people are only going to see this as the point of view of being one of the parents.
Right.
And a lot of people don't even have kids, or they, or their kids are grown, or whatever the case may be. And so they may not quite see it as like, well, this wouldn't be my kid. Well, as we both know, sometimes it is your kid, all walks of life. And I get a lot of inquiries from people who never thought it would happen in their family.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But secondly, and arguably more importantly, as a community, as a society, when we're trying to create like society-wide laws and rules that we all live by, if I'm surrounded by people who are struggling
Mm-hmm.
and they're hungry, they can't find work, they can't find a place to live, and I got a nice place to live, and I've got food, and I got money,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think do you think I'm safe?
No, you're not.
No,
safe.
I'm not safe, right? And so I need to care about everybody
Yes.
else. It's in my own interest for everyone to be educated and have opportunities, to have jobs and place to live and happiness and freedom, right? Because, like, for instance, people who know me know I'm a Steelers fan. But guess who I root for every Sunday? The Saints.
Right.
Because when the Saints win, I'm
We
surrounded by
win.
happier people.
Yeah, right.
When
We all
LSU
feel
wins,
like we're winning.
I'm surrounded by happy
Yes.
people. And so like, if you want to be surrounded by grim, miserable, spiteful people, yeah, you should like turn up the dial and abuse people and be mean or whatever.
Right.
But what you put out is what you get back.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you're the one who's more mature or more stable or more grounded, like it's on you to take the higher road sometimes.
Right.
Like my kid will be the first person to tell me if she starts losing it or whatever in some way. It's like, my job is to turn down the volume,
Mm-hmm.
not to like meet her there and turn it up.
Right.
And it's like, who are you? You think you're the parent around here? But she's right,
She's right. She's right. And we have to listen to her. Yes.
But, I definitely want to, I want us to talk about Amendment number 1.
Let's get into it. The special courts.
Yeah, specialty courts, which is actually, now I'm going to try to make it easy to understand for people, but it's potentially much more dangerous than the juvenile one. And I'll tell you why. So, first of all, they're hiding the ball on what it is they're doing, right? They're not explaining why they need the power to create a specialty court through the legislature that is outside the jurisdiction of the district courts, right? That they wouldn't tell you what these courts will be, what their goal is. It was Jeff Landry's pet project that Senator Jay Morris carried, and Senator Morris didn't have any clarity for people. And he was very much like, I don't know what the legislature can do anything, right? And when asked whether the judges would be elected or appointed, his answer wasn't one or the other. His answer was, the Constitution says that all judges are elected. What he didn't tell you is a specialty court can be created with a magistrate who's appointed by the governor, right?
Our governor.
Or any old governor, or who knows, President of the United States even, right? But you could create whatever you want to create.
Right.
And it gives this blank check to create courts for, let's just say they create a tourist district in New Orleans, capital district in Baton Rouge. And they say, we're going to take all crimes that happen there, and they're going to go through this court, right?
Right.
With this appointed magistrate who maybe is from Shreveport. And now they're going to be like the judge here. We have no elected power to like hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. Maybe the attorney general is staffing this attorney. Maybe you have a whole different public defense structure, right? And they could just create all like erode everything that we've kind of worked on to try to create a fair court system over the past, couple of 100 years in the making. And they can take like all post-conviction appeals that people file, which is where the real meat and potatoes of a wrongful conviction is argued out.
Right.
They can put all those in one court with an appointed magistrate. No. We've already seen that happen.
Right.
In not very distant Louisiana history, where they just blanket denied everything. They could take all like violent juvenile crime, right? They'll try to do it in bites that make sort of like political sense. Like I could sell this to the public. Like, well, of course we need to, the current courts are not good enough on X. They'll just say like violent juvenile crime or something.
I was about to say, let's bring it back there and get people to buy in.
Yeah. And then people are like, like save us from violent juvenile crime. There'll always be something in the media, right? If it bleeds, it leads. There's always going to be some case that they're going to lean in on. Maybe they're going to take all like suspected terrorism cases. Now, as we know, if it really is like a federal government level terrorism case, well, that's going to go into the federal courts.
Right.
They're going to run it that way. But like, imagine what they start labeling as terrorism to fill up their courts, and next thing you know, it's like people protesting, and they want to call that terrorism.
That's terrorism.
And put that in the courts, right? And so I think it's really, really dangerous to give a blank check on anything. And so to write this into the Constitution and give the legislature the ability to create whatever court they want.
And run it how they want.
In Jackson, Mississippi, they did this a few years back, and they created a court system in downtown heavily black districts.
Yes.
And they decided to create like a super court that had all these like white appointed out of town magistrates or judges rather running it. And even though it was against the Constitution, they did it anyway. And so that's in current litigation, but like that's the model here. And so our current government, state and federal, does not like care about pre-existing law.
No.
They are totally fine with trying to challenge and reverse laws and change them.
Yeah.
And they're open about that. It's not like telling anyone that they don't know. And I tell people all the time, like, people that thought Roe v. Wade was bad law, people who thought that women shouldn't have the right to get an abortion, they fought 50 years on that. And they won. And now they got that win. People that are like, wow, if we can overturn that, we can get rid of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Miranda.
And get away with it.
Yeah. And so all of our rights are really at risk right now, particularly coming out of Louisiana, because there's sort of a perfect storm of the power structure where they can pass whatever law they want. They can get it through the court system. They pack this court system with a lot of Jeff Landry friends. They literally just got one guy to step off, so they get another guy on there. And that gets us to like number 4, which is about trying to fill vacancies for judges. And if people remember, the first thing that Jeff Landry did was go after the Ethics Commission, who had some inquiries about some of his like use of donors' funds and stuff. And he's got like various colorful stories in his past, right? And then similarly, like Donald Trump, for like just the other day or today, I forget what it was, he decided to get rid of the inspector generals, right? So they don't want anybody watching what they're doing. No. And that's part of so it's like they're going to be blatant about trying to erode rights, and at the same time don't want anybody fact checking them, checking over them, reading the books. And we're really up against things right now.
And if we don't vote against it, who would you say, even though we could probably answer that question ourselves, but who would you say will be most impacted by that court?
So,
that specialty court.
I mean, as we know, in Baton Rouge, in Louisiana, there's this sense of us versus them, and we're the them here in New Orleans, right? Particularly black people in New Orleans, low-income people in New Orleans. Yeah. And, obviously people remember Jeff Landry's famous line of like, I'm going to bring New Orleans to heel. You know, they created that Troop NOLA to put a bunch of state police officers
Right.
In
The
town.
healers.
They said whoever they arrest, they're going to, run it through the Attorney General's office. Had rehired Canizero, the DA that we got rid of, who said he was like done. He's going to retire with his kids.
Got him back in.
But he's back running stuff with Jeff Landry through the AG's office. And now Canizaro's daughter is like maybe going to become the U.S. attorney here in the federal system. And so it's like trying to take away the sort of community elected democracy, right? The principle of democracy is like the people who live in a community should have control over their community.
Right.
But we're their cash cow, right?
Yeah.
We're their Super Bowls, we're their Mardi Gras, we're their, we're their weddings, their conferences. Everything comes through New Orleans, and they want that chunk. A lot of people that don't live in New Orleans have a business interest in New Orleans.
Yeah.
They just want to pull the money out.
They want profit.
So they want us just to be compliant, working for dirt. They're going to probably come in and try to do all kinds of ICE raids. And so they need us.
Already started.
Right? They need us to be the villain on the one hand. Right? So they can keep on pointing the finger. And as you know, when you point the finger, you got 3 pointing right back at you.
Right.
And so nobody wants to talk about crime elsewhere. Nobody wants to talk about poverty elsewhere, education elsewhere. They're just going to talk about New Orleans.
New Orleans is it.
And come strong and try to militarize the place. And the reality is, when you start taking out all those workers,
right.
Well, guess what happens when Americans have to fill those spots and start saying, I ain't going up on that roof for no $8 an hour.
It's too much.
It's hot out there. This stuff's heavy. I hurt my back. I want benefits. I'm only working 40 hours, right? People are going to start complaining. And they're going to be like, man, I thought if we just like open up these jobs to everybody. But the thing is, those businessmen and women, they know who's willing to work for cheap.
They know. Right?
Otherwise, they'd be hiring other people. They're breaking the law all the time when they hire undocumented workers. And I'm not faulting them for that, but let's not have a double standard there. Either support people who want to work hard, pay them a fair wage, let them assimilate into our culture, or don't be part of that system. But you can't just call the cops when your payroll is due.
Right.
I got 20 people right here. I owe them all $1,000, but come get them.
Come get them.
Right?
Use them up.
And then holding those people accountable. So, as we militarize this, we know that the feeder of the incarceration industry is concentrated groups of people in poverty. And in Louisiana, that's going to overwhelmingly be black people in places like New Orleans and Baton Rouge and Lafayette and Shreveport, Alexandria, Lake Charles, Monroe. And because if you want to catch fish, you got to go where there's like a barrel. Yeah, you got to go get them. You don't want no like one shark in the open ocean.
Right.
You want
and that's how they're taking us down in packs.
Yeah.
What is it that you think, Bruce, we could tell our people like why they should be just diving in, coming together, getting serious about what's happening, and pulling your families in? Yeah. What is it? How should we go about doing that?
I think so. This constitutional amendment election is coming after Mardi Gras, March 29th. Right. Early voting is going to start on March 15th.
Yes.
Right. And so Mardi Gras is like the 4th or something like that, or early on. But it's going to come up on people really quick. They're going to have a lot of time to be thinking about it. But we got to plant the seed with everybody that we know on a couple fronts. First, know that in a super low turnout election, like these little secret sneaky elections, because there's nothing else on the ballot. Right. So you're going to show up for these 4 amendments, or you're not going to show up at all. But in a super low turnout election, your vote counts like triple than it would normally. Right? Yes. Because there's only so many people voting.
There's not enough of us out there.
And if I get 100 people to vote in an election where there's only 1,000 people, that's 10% of the votes. Yeah. And so we need to get people vote no on all these, no on all 4. And so it's easy to remember. But we really need to get these parents, these youth, these school teachers.
That's why I'm diving in.
Yeah, they're going to be emptying out our schools, right? And they're going to be emptying out our communities. And we're going to have a lot of siblings whose other sibling is incarcerated.
Yes.
You're gonna have also, I mean, it's not like they're stopping at the youth, right? But like, you have, like a lot of kids who have an incarcerated parent, so it's hard to go to school and keep your mind focused. And we've seen this like with ICE raids, for instance. Like you have kids that maybe try to go to school the day after their parents were raided in the middle of the night. Just go. Where's your homework? It's like, I got like more serious things going on. So we need to get everybody really engaged, and we need to get those teachers, I think, to spread the word, because they have access to a lot of parents.
Churches. We gotta get in
churches.
There. Yeah. And
stop thinking that ain't gonna happen to your kid. And the thing is, even if your kid is super perfect, it's gonna happen to one of your kids' friends.
I know some really good, perfect kids right now that's sitting in that juvie.
There you go. And you might be in the car with that not so perfect kid.
Right.
And you're just like, you thought you were just going from like the movies to a concert or whatever.
Or maybe you just got to ride home because it was dark and.
Totally. And then the kid maybe had something in the car.
Yeah.
And, and all of a sudden they're getting pulled over because they're kids. They're being targeted and profiled. And you find something in that car, and next thing you know, like everybody's up against it. And now you're in
the system.
Yeah. And they're pressuring people to, to talk or get like a zillion years, to turn on somebody else to save their own skin.
And then money.
Yeah. And then that's going to put you in harm's way too. And it's just like the more we dial up the temperature on incarceration, just the more we all burn and melt.
Yeah.
So we got, we each one teach one is one of our mantras,
Every household.
Yeah.
Should be talking about this.
And we're going to be, people can check out our social medias. We're going to be putting out more and more materials as we go. There's other organizations and coalitions and people that are, lifting up one or more of these amendments. I do think there's going to be a lot of interest around the Amendment 3 about the kids being locked up. But that's the biggest reason why I'm also worried that, Amendment 1 needs to be talked about. Because the thing about Amendment 1 is they slipped in the specialty courts thing.
Right.
If you read it, there's two parts of it, which is probably illegal. They call that a dual object. But one part is about disciplining lawyers from out of state. Oh, what's wrong with that? I thought you could already do that, right?
Right.
And that makes sense. Who's against that? Everyone's going to be for that. And it's very actually like straightforward and easy to understand, which a constitutional amendment should be. But then it hides this little and the power to create specialty courts outside the district court jurisdiction. Well, what court? Oh, well, it could be anything, right? And so that's what makes it really dangerous. And we already know how the way that they think.
We already see what's happening.
Yeah.
So we can't trust Amendment 1.
No.
And then let's go on to Amendment 2.
So Amendment 2 is a whole lot of tax stuff. As folks will recall, they wanted to do a constitutional amendment this past year, or constitutional convention rather, and put all this stuff on the chopping block, right? And with this overall idea of we've got all these budget things that are in a constitution, they should be in the law instead of the Constitution, and regardless of that point, they basically kind of had a constitutional convention in a way. In this special session that they had this winter that came out of nowhere. And they had some bills out there. They're all were going to be amendments. And this one was the big budget one.
They moved quick, too.
Yeah, they moved massively quick. They didn't really get
see it coming.
And the thing is, the funny part is, they just passed an amendment that required people to have a 48-hour window to read through a budget bill. And then they didn't give people a 48-hour window to read through this thing as they kept on getting amended and moved around. So they're violating their own principles before they even go into play. But a couple of things to keep in mind of what it really does. First, I'll say the sort of marketing point that they're using is it takes that teacher bonus and it makes it regular. So they're going to say teachers. Now, I think teachers are pretty hip to that, right?
Right, they should be.
Yeah.
We're going to spread the word.
Yeah, and you're just going to, pick my pocket later on anyway. So the other big things that it does is it takes these funds that we have that got $1 billion in them and whatnot, and they generate interest revenue, 50 mil, 60 mil or something on an annual basis, right? These are our investments. And it's like, you know what? Let's just cash in our investments. Let's get rid of these funds. So they're not going to be able to bring in all this and that. Now, as we know, your cousin who ain't doing so well cashes out on their house. Where are they going to be in 5 years? They're going to have no house, and no money.
Yeah.
Right? They're just going to spend it off, right?
Houses.
So we're just going to spend off this money, including like education money that they're going to cut. And then they're going to end up having to push that money back on the locals who are going to be stressed out. And you can now
tax money.
And so to keep paying those teachers, now you're going to be under more pressure locally to keep that income going because the state money is going to get cut.
Right.
So it ends up being like a Peter Paul thing, right?
Yeah. Rob Peter, pay Paul.
It also is going to take the wealthiest people's, we're talking like $1 million a year type people, and really chop down their taxes. And so that's like the real sort of win for the people that care about this stuff. And then the other thing it's going to do is it's going to create a whole bunch of new taxes and potentially increase sales taxes. It's going to take some caps off. Okay. And so we're going to spend more money on those eggs, more money
eggs can't get no higher for people.
The thing that, and there's like a lot of, it's another one of these gray things. So like how it plays out is going to be part of a lot of arguments, in the future too. But like, typically you'd be taxed on like a good, right? Like you buy a microphone, right? Okay. And you pay a sales tax on this like product, and you wouldn't be taxed on a service. Like I clean your house. I don't know, it's not, there's like an extra tax on that, right? You're just paying me $100 an hour or whatever. Now I got to go pay income tax on that, right? But now you're going to add these other taxes for services. One of the ones that came up was like massages or whatever. And so the massage parlor will then have to pay some of that money that they're getting. And on car mechanics, I think they're going to have to pay. And so it just makes things more complicated, makes more effort on everybody. And it's, you read the fiscal note on, so anytime there's like a big budget thing, the legislature has to go and get what's called a fiscal note that explains the impact it's going to have on the monies.
Right.
I find that usually to be the most honest part of the bill, right? And I always go there first, because even if they don't give you like a true projection, because they might say, for instance, using like criminal bills, for instance, they'll say like, last 3 years, 1,500 people have been imprisoned on this crime for an average of 5 years each. And then it costs this average thing. And so they'll do the math. But then they might end up with like, but we don't know how many people are going to be arrested in the future. Right. So we're not going to tell you how much it's going to impact. But they gave you those little data points. So on this one, they gave a few different models of what it'll do to the funds. And basically under all the different models, like they're going to raise less revenue, particularly around the big tax, the big power players are going to pay less. And because of that, we're going to have less money to spend on everything that we try to do as a state, right? Right. Our infrastructure, our services, our education. And that is where we're going to feel it the most. But the funny part is, as we know, they ain't going to dent the prison's jails.
So who win and who lose?
Well, the sheriffs are going to be the last ones to get their money cut. The losers are going to be people who work in education or social work or mental health counseling, healthcare. That's really what's going to get chopped down the most. Housing subsidies for people, tax breaks on housing. So it's rent's going to go up. No on that one.
No. And we already highlighted Amendment 3. Mm-hmm. We just need to protect our youth. Yeah. And then going down to Amendment 4, because we covered 3. So let's just go back to 4 before we close out.
Yeah. So 4 is, it seems to me to be a much more harmless one. It's about the process of like replacing judges when they leave. But honestly, I don't trust them. We can. And, but we know that like elections don't really work the best, especially around judges. It's usually like really highly financed people become, the candidates. They also, lawyers work amongst each other to figure out who they want to get elected. And then you don't want to challenge the status quo, or your legal career is going to get impacted. Mm-hmm. And so that whole
Right.
system has problems.
Right.
So, but they can just keep it as it is. Vote no on all four.
No. Closing out.
Well, keep in mind, people can still register to vote.
Yes, you can. You have up to February 26th.
February 26th.
Yes.
Right?
Online registration deadline is March the 8th.
Which is the way most people are registering now anyway, is
Right.
online. So March 8th is really the registration deadline. And, as we know, that's most important for, like, young people.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us, we're either kind of registered or we're not. Some people move into the state. That's important too. But, the biggest wave of people who are, like, eligible and not registered are going to be young people.
So they will go on the Go Vote app, get registered, and early voting from March the 15th to March the 22nd.
Yeah. And, we're going to have information on votersorganized.org. We're also going to have it on voiceoftheexperience.org. And again, follow us our socials, spread the word, text your closest friends, keep them in mind, your family. We all got, 20, 30, sometimes like 50 people who, like, really do value our perspective.
Yeah.
And those are the people we all got to be thinking about moving. And you can't just sit on the sideline. We're not even asking for much.
No.
You can quietly go into the voting booth. You can secretly cast your ballot. You can push that button. You do not have to get out there. You don't have to wave a sign. You don't have to put your career in jeopardy or whatever the case may be. You don't have to be registered as a Democrat or Republican or an independent.
Right.
You can just you go in there, and this is how long does it take you to vote?
Few minutes.
And usually
3.
they save a few parking spots.
Right. There's spots available.
You zoom in there, and then nowadays, so many people vote early, which is great.
I got to get out there early.
But, like, even if you don't make it till election day, there's no lines. There's enough places to vote. Like, I mean, I wish there were lines, to be honest.
Right.
But you can just zoom right in. And, place will have, like, four voting sort of booths, and you go in there and boom.
Just get it done.
Yeah, get her done.
Our lives depend on it.
Yeah.
Our lives depend on it.
It's true. And we gotta be thinking about the future.
Yes.
Those, if we're not, we're just being short-sighted and silly.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We heard it from Bruce Reilly, DJ
and professional dancer.
and professional dancer. He got it all here. We got it. Get out and vote. Get out and vote this time. And let's protect our youth. From chains to chain, go on our social. Hear more, get involved. Get to the polls. Thank you.
All right.
All right.